Long ago, there was an old woman who lived with her son. She always taught him to be kind, saying, "Never harm anyone, and don't hurt or kill any animal, no matter how small or disliked it might be." They were very poor. Every day the young man would go to the forest to gather wood. He'd carry it back home on his back, sell it for 2 pennies, and use the money to buy bread for himself and his mother. One day he saw some village boys tormenting a kitten, laughing at its cries of pain. "Why are you hurting this poor animal?" he asked them. "Please, let it go." The boys replied, "Give us your pennies and we'll free it." Without hesitation, the young man handed over the 2 pennies he'd earned that day from selling wood. He took the kitten home with him, even though it meant he and his mother would go to bed hungry that night. The next day, he took the kitten with him to the forest. That evening, he managed to sell his bundle of wood for 4 pennies. He spent 2 pennies on bread and was walking home with the other 2 in his pocket when he came across the village boys again. This time they were torturing a mouse. Once again, the young man gave his 2 pennies to the boys and took the mouse home with him. On the 3rd day, he rescued a puppy, and on the 4th day, a small snake. He kept the snake in a jug at home. The following day, he took all the animals with him to the forest to cut wood. At noon, he sat down by a fountain to eat his lunch and shared some with the animals. He took the snake out of the jug and set it free, but the reptile didn't leave. When he offered it a piece of bread, something extraordinary happened. As soon as the snake bit into the bread, it transformed into a handsome boy. The boy explained, "I'm the Prince of India. Magicians kidnapped me and turned me into a snake. The spell could only be broken if a human gave me bread to eat with their own hand. I escaped from the magicians and came to your village hoping someone would feed me. But those boys found me and were about to kill me when you saved me. I owe you my life and my freedom." The prince continued, "Let me give you some advice. When I return home, my father will be overjoyed and will want to reward you with his most precious possessions. But when he asks what you want, be careful. Only request the ring on his finger. It's magical. When you turn its jewel upside down, 2 genies will appear to grant your wishes." The young man accompanied the prince to the Indian king's court. Upon seeing his son, the king was overcome with joy. The prince recounted everything that had happened and introduced the young man as his savior. The king turned to the young man and said, "Ask for anything you desire. You've saved my heir, and I'll give you whatever you want, even half of my kingdom." "Long live the king," the young man replied humbly. "I only wish for the ring on your finger." The king's face fell. "Curse whoever advised you to ask for that. It's my most valuable possession. But I've made a promise, so I must honor it." Reluctantly, the king handed over the ring and ordered his servants to fill the young man's saddlebags with gold. The young man returned home and told his mother everything that had transpired. His mother's eyes lit up. "Well then, son," she said excitedly, "let me go and ask our king to give you his daughter in marriage." The young man agreed, and his mother, after buying herself a new dress and making herself as presentable as possible, went to the royal court. "What do you want?" the king asked when she arrived. "Long live the king," the old woman said. "I've come, as God wills it, to ask you to give your daughter in marriage to my son." "Very well," the king replied. "But does your son have wealth equivalent to the dowry I can give my daughter?" "Of course he does," the old woman answered confidently. "How much do you want him to have?" The king thought for a moment, then said, "He must have a treasure full of gold like mine, and a magnificent palace to match. The road between my palace and his must be covered with a single soft rug. On both sides there should be shady trees with horsemen riding milky white horses from one end to the other. If he can provide all this, I'll give him my daughter in marriage. If not, then I'm afraid I must refuse." The old woman returned home and told her son what the king had said. The young man smiled, turned the jewel of the ring upside down, and suddenly 2 genies appeared before him, their hands folded across their chests. "Tell us your wish," they said, "and we'll make it happen immediately." The young man instructed them to prepare everything the king had demanded. In just one night it was all ready. The next day, the king was greatly impressed with the palace and all its surroundings. True to his word, he gave his daughter in marriage to the young man. The couple lived happily together until the old woman passed away. However, their happiness was about to be threatened. A merchant had heard about the magic ring and was determined to get it for himself. He disguised himself as a peddler and came to the palace when the young man was out hunting. Only the princess was home. She opened the door to look at the peddler's goods. He said to her, "I sell beautiful items for ladies. To make it easier, I don't ask for money. Instead, I exchange my goods for old jewelry, like rings. Surely you have some old rings you could trade for these lovely items." The princess, intrigued by the offer, said, "Let me see if we have any rings I could trade." She went inside and returned with the magic ring, saying, "I found this among my husband's things. Will this do?" The merchant, hiding his excitement, exchanged some worthless trinkets for the precious ring. As soon as he put it on his finger, he turned the jewel upside down. Instantly, the two genies appeared, ready to do his bidding. "I want you to take this palace with me in it and carry it to the island of the seven seas," he commanded, "and throw the former owner into the deepest part of the ocean." In an instant, the palace, with the princess and the merchant inside, was transported to the distant island. The genies then seized the young man, who had just returned from his hunt. They were about to throw him into the bottomless sea when they hesitated, remembering he was their former master. Instead, they left him in a wilderness on the shore. This was a terrible turn of events for the young man. He wandered for a long time until he came across a fisherman's hut. The fisherman took him in as an apprentice. Meanwhile, the dog, cat, and mouse that the young man had saved were distressed by their master's misfortune. They decided to journey to the island of the seven seas, to retrieve the ring from the merchant and return it to their master. The animals set off on their journey. When they reached the sea, the dog entered the water with the cat perched on its neck and the mouse riding on the cat's back. As they swam, the cat and mouse asked nervously, "We hope we're not too heavy for you, brother dog." The dog replied proudly, "Nonsense. You're as light as a feather. Be careful not to be blown away by my breathing." After a long swim, they finally reached the island of the seven seas and spotted their master's palace. It was night time. The dog stood at the base of the wall while the cat, with the mouse on its back, climbed up to a window. Finding it closed, it was the mouse's turn to shine. It gnawed a small hole in the wood, just big enough to squeeze through. Once inside, the mouse searched everywhere for the ring, but couldn't find it. The merchant was fast asleep. "Check his fingers," the cat whispered from outside, but the ring wasn't there. "Look in his mouth," the cat suggested next. The mouse carefully examined the sleeping merchant and discovered the ring was indeed in his mouth. But how to get it out? The mouse noticed a snuff box near the bed and had an idea. It ran to the cellar, dipped its tail in vinegar, then returned and coated its tail with snuff from the box. With its tail now coated in vinegar and snuff, the clever mouse climbed onto the merchant's beard and carefully inserted its tail into his nostril. The reaction was immediate. The merchant let out an enormous sneeze, and the ring flew out of his mouth. The mouse squeaked with joy, quickly grabbed the ring, and darted back through the hole. The merchant woke up, lit a candle, and searched for the ring, but couldn't find it. Thinking he'd look again in the morning, he went back to sleep. Outside, the mouse and cat climbed down to where the dog was waiting. They decided to put the ring in the cat's mouth for safekeeping. Once again, they set off across the seven seas, heading towards the shore where their master was working as a fisherman's apprentice. As they neared the shore, the dog spoke up. "I've been swimming this whole time, but you have the ring. You'll give it to our master and get all the praise, while I, who work the hardest, will get no credit. That's not fair. Put the ring in my mouth before we reach land." The cat replied, "Brother dog, you're tired and keep your mouth open while swimming. We're afraid you might drop the ring into the sea. Let's wait until we reach the shore, then you can give it to the master." "No," insisted the dog, "give it to me now, or I'll drop you both into the sea." Feeling threatened, the cat reluctantly placed the ring in the dog's mouth. but the dog couldn't keep its mouth closed while swimming. It opened its mouth to pant, and the ring slipped out, falling into the sea. They reached the shore, all deeply upset. The mouse and cat began to attack the dog, who tucked its tail between its legs, acknowledging its mistake, but still defending itself against their sharp claws and teeth. As they fought and rolled in the sand, they approached the fisherman's hut. Their former master, always kind to animals, came out to break up the fight. To his surprise, he recognized his old friends. Seeing him, all three animals stopped fighting and greeted him, but then resumed their quarrel even more fiercely. Realizing he couldn't leave them like this, the young man found 3 ropes and tied them up separately. He gave them food and water, trying to calm them down. The next day, as the young man was sorting through a net full of fish to prepare for market, he picked up a particularly large fish. Suddenly, all 3 animals became extremely agitated. The dog barked, the cat meowed, and the mouse squeaked, all trying to break free from their ropes. As the young man began to cut open the fish, the mouse, having gnawed through its rope, darted forward and plunged into the fish's belly. In a flash, it emerged with the magic ring in its mouth. The fish had swallowed it. The mouse jumped onto its master's lap and presented the ring. Seeing it, the young man suddenly understood why the animals had been so troubled. He untied the dog and cat, hugging and thanking all 3 for their brave efforts. Without hesitation, he turned the ring's jewel upside down. Instantly, the 2 genies appeared, ready to serve. "I want my palace restored to its original place," the young man commanded. "I want to be back in it with my wife, and I want the merchant thrown into the bottomless sea." No sooner had he finished speaking than he found himself back in his palace with his wife and animal friends. The merchant was cast into the bottomless sea, where he would sink forever, never reaching the bottom. Thus the wicked merchant was punished, and the virtuous young man regained everything he had lost. He lived happily with his wife and loyal animal companions, never forgetting the kindness that had brought him such good fortune. From that day on, the young man used the ring's power wisely, always remembering his mother's teachings about kindness to all creatures. He and his wife ruled their kingdom with compassion and generosity, and their land prospered. As for the dog, cat, and mouse, they were honored as heroes and lived in luxury in the palace for the rest of their days, their bond of friendship stronger than ever.